We're going to talk a little bit more about how job boards and employers can get more out of their job board partners. Some employers think of job boards just as places to search resumes or post jobs. Some job boards do those really well, and others don't even offer those products. With millions of employers and thousands of job boards in the US alone, there are also a lot of myths, misconceptions, and misunderstandings about how talent acquisition can get the most out of their job board partners. I'm going to first start by introducing our panelists. So I'll hop over. My name is Kristen LeBlanc. I'm with ATAP. And ATAP is the only professional association for all of talent acquisition. You can find more about us at atapglobal.org. And I'll turn it over to Jeff to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Jeff Dickey-chasins. I'm a consultant that works exclusively with job boards and recruiting companies, and the consultancy is called Job Board Doctor.
Great, thank you. Ryan?
Hi, Ryan Affolter. I lead up recruitment marketing for Lifetime and am also a consultant with Proactive Talent.
Okay, William?
Hi folks, William Ranga. I am the Director of Talent Acquisition at Spokeo, which is a vertical search engine for people's digital identities.
Great. And Stephen?
I'm Stephen Rothberg, founder of College Recruiter, job search site for college students and recent grads.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you for everyone for being here. We're really excited to have you all on our panel this morning. So I'm going to jump right in and say to William. So William, are job boards dinosaurs?
No, they're very much relevant. I think from a corporate standpoint, in this day and age, people should certainly be thinking about how they use it as far as job boards, which ones they use, and be thoughtful about the metrics that they're looking to achieve by utilizing those platforms. So pick them carefully, measure them carefully, but they certainly do help extend brand and awareness of our company, particularly if you don't have a big employment brand marketing team behind you. It's a wonderful way to get additional talent outside of referrals and outside of sourcing.
Yeah, and William, actually, I'd like to jump in. I actually do think there are some job boards that are dinosaurs. They probably know who they are too, because they're really doing the same thing that they were doing 20 years ago. But I think most of the successful job boards that are out there that I work with and that I've seen do exactly what you say. They run a variety of different services, and they've evolved far past the models that we saw in the late 90s. So.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was going to say, in my opinion, I would agree. I think it has everything to do with evolution and technology. Those that are successful have evolved to modern recruitment practices. They're successful because they have benefits to both the candidate and the employer, which could be anything from online communities, social connectivity, that kind of omni-channel approach. They offer more than just job postings, right? There may be display or email or text or multiple ways to reach their candidates. And another big thing is they've learned to evolve with technology, especially things like programmatic job advertising software, to be able to connect and allow employers and agencies in these technologies to advertise your jobs is incredibly important.
Speaking of technology, Ryan, is it a bad thing when job boards scrape your ATS? What do you think about that?
That is the million-dollar question. I think it has everything to do with intent. And I think in most cases, it's not a bad thing, but there are some cases where, there is bad intent. So in a nutshell, job content is publicly traded content. There's nothing illegal about a job board or anyone for that matter to scrape your content, but it has a lot to do with the intent. Most job boards communities have, the best of intentions in sharing job opportunities, but there are some bad eggs out there that use it to, increase their, communities and get people to sign up for their services. And ultimately it's frustrating for a candidate because they never actually connect to the real job, right? They're signing up for things that they didn't intend to. It's almost, kind of like a clickbait type scam. So, you know, it's not bad, but I think employers need to educate themselves on best practices around it, kind of know who the, you know, bad players are in the space, and take proactive action to mitigate that. You know, we can talk more about that later, but there are some technologies that can help in this case, but ultimately it's a tough world to 100% police.
Yeah, if I'll add to that. I agree with everything that Ryan said. One of the bad things that a very, very small number of job boards do, but I think it's really, really bad, so it's a problem, is that they will scrape job postings from ATS, from other job boards, wherever they can find them, present those to the candidate, and then they will basically say to the candidate, apply to this job, and the candidate's in the process of what they think is applying to that job, and the quote unquote job board will come back and say, you're not well qualified for this position if you sign up for this college or this boot camp or this coaching session or whatever, then this employer is going to be more likely to hire you. And so you're taking a group of people who are searching for work. A large number of them are, by definition, kind of desperate. And you're preying on that desperation. Very harmful to the candidate, also very harmful to the employer's brand, because the candidates don't often appreciate that it's the scummy job board that's doing it. They think it's the employer. And if they, you know, those of us in the industry who understand how this works, we understand it's that job board. It has nothing to do with the employer, but it does harm the employer's brand. So I do think it's really important that employers police where their own postings are going.
And Stephen, I have to say that is truly scummy behavior on the part of the companies that are doing that. I think one thing that happens, and sometimes it's just inadvertent, is that job boards will be scraping either with the permission of the company or without the permission of the company. And then but they won't be scraping frequently enough. And so they'll have jobs on their site that the employer's taken down and are no longer on their ATS, but are on the job board. And that can be super frustrating for candidates. And that, quite honestly, is just a bad practice. It's something I tell all my clients that they need, if they're going to be doing that kind of scraping and grabbing jobs from other places, they have to be responsible about refreshing it on a regular basis.
Yeah.
But from the candidate side of the fence, it's horrible. So.
Yeah, and like we've worked with Ryan in the role that he's in now and previously, and from the very first time that we worked with Ryan and the companies that he represents, there's always a requirement. You have to update at least once a day. And that's just, it's something that employers absolutely should insist upon, at least once a day.
Yeah, I would even expand that out to just making sure you're very familiar with what the terms of service are from an employer standpoint. And even if you're an individual, if there's something you're going to be signing, check and see what you're buying into here and what the assumptions are, because it might not necessarily be in your favor. Data ownership, who owns what, and when does somebody become your candidate versus somebody else's, and so forth. That should really be lined out and very, very clear. So if you don't have a chief legal officer or somebody checking that stuff, work with somebody to have that reviewed. And often I've been pleasantly surprised with vendors or partners that I didn't think were going to be ready to negotiate or clarify terms, shall we say. Most are. The good ones certainly are.
Great. So Jeff, why does the site you post your job to always seem to share those jobs with other sites?
Well, I think this goes back to what the definition of what the core responsibility of a job board is. And I would say that most employers will say, well, a job board is designed to get me candidate visibility and traffic and applies. Essentially, it's a very specialized marketing device. And so from the job board perspective, they're going to be doing everything they can to be driving more traffic to your jobs. And so inside the industry, it's called cross-posting. So basically you say, I'm going to have it on my site, but I also have to recognize that like maybe I don't have a good visibility into a specific minority population. So I'm going to cross-post to another site that has a lot of visibility in the minority population. Or, you know, I need it to be super visible in the New York metro area. And so I post into a site that has a lot of visibility into that. And typically a job board is more than happy to brag about the cross-posting that they're doing. They don't want it to be a surprise. They'll say, hey, you know, this is a benefit of working with us. So I'd say in general, it's a good idea. The only time it's not good, and again, this is when you start to get into this, this tier of sites that I would say they're not really at their core a job board. They're more of a traffic play. They're busy trying to generate lots of traffic so they can generate revenue from things like Google AdWords and, you know, various affiliate programs and stuff like that. So they may be doing cross-posting willy-nilly just to generate revenue for themselves. But you know, it's good to ask the job board, why are you doing this? You know, why are you cross-posting? Where are you cross-posting? And what should I see, and how, and when do you stop cross-posting?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think you see I see examples that, you know, like I mentioned before, the intent was good, but the execution, you know, there's always the exception to the rule. For example, I was working with a hospital system based out of the Columbus, Ohio area. They hire a lot of kind of these telesales client support reps. And typically this is a position like, think of the big companies like United Health Group or Aetna. They hire these types of positions to work remotely across the country. That doesn't work for this hospital system. They're 100% on site. So they're kind of the exception to the rule. But we see a lot of sites, or these, you know, whether it's an aggregator or job search engine, grabbing these jobs and creating these unauthorized like duplicates of these jobs in markets all over the country. They show up in like Chicago or Nashville, and that's a real problem. And it's tough to really even narrow down where that comes from. But you know, and then, you know, you add another complexity to this issue is, you know, some of the major sites, LinkedIn, for example, is in the aggregation space. So they rely a lot on their backfill, or their limited listings, as they call it, to be provided by, you know, other job search engines in the space. So when some of these, you know, unauthorized activity happens, there's always a chance it can bubble up to, you know, LinkedIn or another very highly visible board that you have. And to Stephen's point, you know, that can be incredibly damaging to your brand. So we were getting, you know, phone calls from their talent acquisition team. You know, why are we promoting this job, you know, outside of Columbus, Ohio? These are not remote positions, you know, and you start shutting down channels, but ultimately it's really tough to police where that, you know, original unauthorized activity came from.
Yeah, and if I can add too, this was the question that you just asked, Kristen, is kind of, it sparked a conversation that then led to this discussion that we're having. The way that the person who kind of brought this conversation up, that it was a Facebook conversation, and they were upset about kind of what we're talking about, is like, you know, I'm grossly paraphrasing, but I post a job to one job board, but it's over on some other job board. And if I wanted to post it to that other job board to begin with, I would have just done so. You know, what Jeff was saying, and I just sort of put it a different way, and I put it a different way to this person. And I think he understood, was it's somewhat similar to the third-party recruiting model, or, you know, headhunters, where a lot of times you'll have that executive recruiter who will get the requisition from the employer, but they don't have the right candidates to fill that role. And there'll be another executive recruiter, maybe who works for a different organization, who has the perfect candidates for that role, but has no relationship with the employer. Together, they can match the candidate with the employer, and they split the fee. And, splits was a term that we used to hear a lot of. It's effectively what job boards are doing. One job board might have those candidates in New York, like Jeff was saying, and the other job board might have that relationship with the employer. And the employer doesn't know anything about the job board with the candidates, and the candidates don't know anything about the job board that has the relationship with the employer. But through programmatic, through cross postings, in a very efficient way, they can bring those two together. And if it's done ethically, that's great. The other thing I would add as an owner of a job board is that we will be asked probably once a month. And actually, I think Ryan was the very first person who asked us for this. Like, we want to post these jobs to College Recruiter, but we do not want you to post those jobs to this site, this site, this site, because we already either have relationships with them or we don't want our postings on those sites for whatever reason. So like one of our largest customers says, do not post these jobs to LinkedIn or Talroo or whatever. And it's like not an issue. We have the ability in a lot of other job boards too, to pick and choose what other sites we post each employer's jobs to. It's usually not all or nothing. We can easily say it's going to run on College Recruiter and these other sites, but not this site, this site, this site. So if it matters, ask. If you're already posting jobs to ZipRecruiter and you're concerned that by posting it to Indeed, that Indeed will post it to ZipRecruiter, just say to your Indeed rep, are you posting to Zip? And if they say yes, tell them fine, but you can't post our jobs to Zip. And then like William was talking about, like a contract, just put it in your contract.
And to add more context to that, if we were providing, College Recruiter a list, it had to do with, research that we had collected over years, over, dozens of employers that maybe I had been working with in my past agency worlds. Of those that, either had kind of violated what we would like to see as far as job content sharing or the candidate experience, or they were associated with those that were. But again, you're walking kind of a thin line there, because it's you can put processes in place to try and mitigate these things. But going back to the original point, job content is publicly shared. There's nothing illegal about any job board scraping and repurposing your jobs without your consent. So in the end, it's impossible to 100% police this world, but like everyone said here, there are best practices to mitigate it.
That's great advice. Thank you. So Stephen, is it better to advertise on a duration, or maybe a performance basis?
In short, yes. It depends upon the needs of the employer. So we have a hybrid business model where some of our customers advertise or post jobs on what we call a traditional duration basis. X dollars for Y postings, or X dollars for 30 days. And, typical pricing out there might be, a single posting might be $75, $200, whatever, for 30 days, right? And sometimes it's a posting, you can only post that job. More times than not, it's what job boards call a slot. And so you can run an ad for 5 days and then a completely different ad for 12 days and so on and so forth. And you can just use that as you want. LinkedIn does a lot of that. Most of our customers don't do that anymore. But I think we're kind of, we're unusual. Most job boards, I just saw a survey, 85% of job boards are unable to run ads programmatically or on a per click basis. But all of the big ones are. So the 15% that can run it on a cost per click basis, they're probably delivering 90% of the traffic of job board traffic out there. So what we tell our employer customers is the more aligned that we can be with your ultimate goals, the better. And the closer that we can get to their goal of hiring someone, the better off they are. And so charging for an ad just to run is not as good as charging to deliver candidates to the ATS, a click. Charging per click isn't as good as charging per application. Charging per application isn't as good as charging per hire. What's really holding the industry back is mostly a technology thing, that the vast majority of employers at the end of the day are only guessing at where their hires are coming from and where their applicants are coming from, because they're not, even if their ATS can identify that automatically, they're very, very few are doing it well. And so the job boards are like, hey, we're not going to send you 5,000 clicks a month and get paid if you hire someone if you don't even know where that hire came from. And then we're going to have to rely on your honesty. We're going to have to rely on your technology. And it's just a big ask for most job boards.
You know, that's a great point. If you can solve the stream of decisions and clicks from view all the way to apply and through hire on some companies' ATS, that would clarify a lot of the discussions I'm having with various different potential partners about whether it was the primary or secondary effect that they had in driving a candidate to our website or awareness of the job. But we still continue to view on metrics. We take it a little bit holistic. How many applicants do we drive? That's certainly, you're right, helpful. But we ultimately are looking for hires that we make as a result of that. So I'm a big advocate of doing test runs, whether it's on a class of positions or levels or location. And then if we're able to agree on what those test performances should look like based on the qualities of the partnership, then I'm happy to kind of wheel and deal in that sense. Particularly if they start doing sort of driver ads, as you mentioned, Stephen, that can be really helpful in promoting a posting we have within a particular community or platform. And I've done certainly negotiations around getting more of those than just getting more job slots if it means I'm going to get a better result down funnel in the selection process. So to have those sort of thoughtful conversations takes time. I would just encourage my colleagues to engage in those. It's well worth both understanding and getting a better result as a result of alignment.
And I just want to jump in. This is kind of interesting, from the job board side of the fence. It's both a technology issue and it's also a sort of overall, how do you handle hiring, right? And so it's I don't think this will ever be solved across the industry, but I think individual clients will be able to solve this because they'll partner up with someone that can do everything they want, and they have an ATS that does everything they want, and they can get everything talking to each other. And then I think they probably can track exactly what that partner is sending to them and what they do. But if you're dealing with 100 job boards, that's not going to happen, So.
Right. So Ryan, should all employers post all jobs programmatically?
I mean, there's certainly, great benefits to having a programmatic strategy. That's a lot of what I do is consult with employers on the best practices and ways and technologies to set something up programmatically. There's a lot of complexity involved in it. So I think, the employer needs to really understand kind of their business need behind it. And you can look at programmatic in two different ways. I mean, there's one, the technology component behind it, having, a software system that can automatically distribute jobs to different channels that you're looking for, or even in some cases manage the advertising spend to different channels on a pay for performance basis, some of the things Stephen was just mentioning. So there's definitely a lot of benefits there. Another benefit to programmatic is, and again, it can't necessarily solve the issue, but what programmatic can do, especially ones that have like a marketplace of sites, is create lots of direct connections of your jobs to the job boards and aggregators out there in the space. And when you do that, you're providing direct job content versus these sites scraping your jobs. So what I've seen in a lot of cases is programmatic does help when employers have issues of, unauthorized job scraping or some of the bad candidate experiences or clickbait situations that we talked about before. Again, there's no guarantees that programmatic can solve that 100%, but the more direct channels that you can create, the more you mitigate that issue. So in a sense, you can control your brand out there a little bit better. And some of these programmatic platforms do a really good job of that, from Appcast to Recruitix to Jovio to some more. If I forgot to mention them, programmatic can also be expensive. These are software as a service platforms. There's several different types of business models out there. Some recruitment ad agencies can connect you with these platforms at a cheaper cost. But then, there's likely some cost of working with a third-party agency involved in that as well too. But models are typically, can be upwards to 15% of all the job advertising spend that an employer has. And with talent acquisition budgets and recruiting budgets being incredibly tight, especially this day and age, that 15% can easily add up very quickly. So programmatic as a whole it's highly recommended, but typically, I don't see a lot of employers going that route unless they have a high volume number of jobs or a large enough recruiting budget where they can afford to put enough budget towards these different types of channels out there. But other kind of key benefits of programmatic, it's pay for performance. You can create benchmarks and look at different dials and levers, so ultimately you can spend your advertising budget smarter. For example, if you're running a software, you can see maybe college recruiters getting you a fantastic cost per application, and you're measuring good hires on the back end. You can put in rules, or the software can automate rules to drive more spend in that direction. Vice versa, if you're spending a lot of budget on a channel and it's not getting a good return, you can simply turn that channel off or dial down the spend. It alleviates the need to have individual contracts with different job boards and vendors, and you can kind of just dial up or down based on where you see good results.
Great, thanks.
Yeah.
I know our time's short, we're running out, so I just want to add one quick thing to add to what Ryan was saying is, for goodness sake, do not allow any vendor, job board, programmatic, anything, to take all of your jobs and then distribute them all out with one big budget. Because the vast majority of organizations might have, 50, 300, 3,000, whatever roles on their website, but it's the typical 80-20, maybe even 90-10 rule. You don't need any help with volume with 80-90% of your jobs. But if you post all of your jobs out on a pay-per-click basis, that job board or job distributor, they're going to use all of your budget on the easiest to fill roles. Because by definition, that's where the clicks are going to come from. So only give budget to the roles that you're struggling for volume with.
Great, thank you. And I know we are running out of time, so I just want to give a huge thank you to our panelists and give them one more second to say how to contact them. Email, Twitter, whatever you'd like to give away. Stephen, you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Stephen Rothberg with College Recruiter, job search site for students and recent grads. Feel free to email me, Stephen, STEVEN, at collegerecruiter.com. Thanks, Kristen.
Jeff?
I'm Jeff Dickey-Chasins, job board doctor. Very easy. Just go to jobboarddoctor.com and you'll be able to contact me in any manner that you want. So,
Great. Thank you. And Ryan?
Ryan Affolter with Lifetime and Proactive Talent. The easiest way to get a hold of me is ryan@proactivetalent.com.
Okay, and William?
Probably email is the best. So wranga@spokio.com, or I am on Twitter at William U.
Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for the panelists. Thank you to our attendees for joining us today. We've had a really fun time and I hope you enjoyed it as well. And we will see you on our next ATAP webinar will be on January 20th, and it's developing a veteran human capital strategy in the modern labor market. So details are at atapglobal.org. Thank you again.
Thank you so much.